Hey everyone, it's Tom Tucker from the Academy for Professional Painting Contractors, and we're back with another episode of From Ladder to Legacy. And as always, I'm joined by our host, the Academy COO, Tara Riley. How you doing this morning, Tara?
Hey, Tom, I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be back in the saddle. We were down in the Texas area with our peer groups and some great folks down there, and we really enjoyed it. So now we're back and we're ready to rock and roll for Ladder to Legacy.
Awesome. You've got a great guest lined up today that I wanted to get on here for quite some time so our listeners could hear his origin story and listen to him talk about the transformation of his company from the humble beginnings up to a thriving painting business today. And I got to tell you, if the listeners want to know a little more about the service mark his company's making, they need to check out the 192 Google reviews with a 4.9 customer rating.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean, I've known Mike for a while since he joined the APPC, and he's in our peer groups, and I can tell you that he's an awesome guy. So it's not surprising to me that he has awesome results.
Well, let's not keep him waiting any longer, and let's bring in Michael Sanchez, the owner of L&J Painting, located in Greenville, South Carolina. Michael, welcome to From Ladder to Legacy, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Sarah. Yep. Really excited to have a good conversation today.
Yeah.
Hey, well, we're looking forward to it. Before I turn it over to Tara, one of the things I had to smile, I saw a job posting that you had some time back. I think it was back around May, and you were advertising on social media to the Greer Taylor's residence, and you're looking for an employee. And one of the questions I ask folks sometime about the culture of their company is like, why in the heck would I want to work for you? And you shared that in this posting, and I just thought it was awesome, and I wanted to share it here and just kind of get your comments, because you had 6 things that were your core values, but 4 of them just jumped out to me. The one I love the most is always be learning. And you set a time for people to spend learning something new. The other one is simple, and it kind of reminds me of Nick Slavic from PCA, where Nick would always say, hire decent people. And yours was, honor your word, don't be lazy, and never settle. And you gave him a core to go with that. But how has that been going with your company? I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's been going great. I mean, so didn't start that way. I thought the way I started hiring was just, I'm just going to hire someone. If they're competent, they're great. And then if we don't get along, then we don't get along. I'll just fire them. But I think learning through trial and error of like, it's okay to not hire someone, even if they are super competent. If they're not going to click in with the culture, ultimately it's just going to be a detriment both to you as the business owner, to the other employees, because they have to deal with that headache, but also to that person, because now they have to go and add another job to their resume, and it doesn't look good. And so, yeah, I think just kind of putting super high filters on the front end really makes it easy to find those people.
Yeah, I think, well, listen, to me, it's impressive because I do think sometimes it's better that the folks self-select out, they'll, and you get the people you're looking for. But like I said, my question, I always look, join an organization. Why do I want to work in that organization? And you answered those questions for me. I'd be wanting to go to work for you. So thanks for that.
I mean, honestly, really looking at values, vision, and communication is a key component of growth and scaling. It's no fun to own a business unless you really enjoy what you're building, right, Mike?
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's a game. It's just a game of like, what can I build, and how many great people I can attract.
Yeah. Well, and that's really the name of the game, because, a lot of times I think we as in the industry and painting owners that I know, we get focused on the things like, how do I get more leads? How do I get more jobs? But really the art of scaling is building that. How do you attract more people, and the right people and I think Tom mentioned what Nick Slavic says, it's like, hey, how do we get decent human beings, right? And I know in my past for business, life's too short to work with people that aren't aligned with you. It's stressful. So I kudos also for me to what you're doing with like really putting your vision out there, your values, and saying, hey, you want to come to work for me? This is great. Hey, but let's go back and you said it's a game, and you're building something, and you are really building something. I see, if I remember correctly, you started in 22, right? Mid-year maybe, and when you started your
Yeah,
business.
it was the fall of 22. Yep.
Yeah. And you managed to in the first full year you were in business, which was 23. I think you were very close to producing 750,000. That seems like the number I remember.
Yep, that's right.
So then you jumped up in 24 to 1 million, and it looks like now in 25 that you're right up on the cusp of being able to get to 1.5 million. So doubling in 2 years is it's not for the faint of heart, is it?
No, that's probably another topic for a different time of like the growing pains of what that would have done right, what I would have done differently. But no, yeah, we've seen good growth and definitely a lot of lessons along the way.
Yeah, well, and it's to me, one thing that has struck me about you is that you're very deliberate in what you're trying to do and grow, and I think that serves you well. But let's just go back to the beginning. What got you into painting in the first place?
Yeah, so I mean, after I got out of the Navy, I got a job as a project manager for a construction company here in Greenville. I was doing that for about 4 or 5 years, managing commercial new construction projects. And so that meant dealing with a bunch of subcontractors and different trades. So I learned that. That's where I cut my teeth in the whole in construction process and how to run a job site, how to schedule, how to budget, everything like that. And ultimately, the reason I left was just the travel time just got further and further and further away. And then we started having kids, and I wasn't really seeing them, and so I decided I'm probably going to look at doing something different. But I really did enjoy construction. It's very similar to the military, where there's a goal, there's a timeline, there's milestones along the way, and you got to execute it. So it's like you just get it done. It's not this thing of like, you can't finish the project. So I like that aspect of it, and I kind of wanted to stay somewhat adjacent to that. So I decided to not become a builder, although I'm licensed to do that stuff. I have the experience of building buildings. It was more just picking a trade, but bringing the excellence that I learned from that company, which was an excellent company, family-owned company, and bringing that culture and that excellence down to one trade. And I picked painting for a couple of reasons we can talk about, but that's kind of how I started it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic story. I'd like to delve into that. You start talking about your background. So, you were in the military, and then you were working with a construction company. How do you feel like that shaped your work ethic and also what you brought to your new company, L&J?
As far as like the military goes, definitely the organization of it, like just being a little bit organized, has helped me. I think the biggest thing that would help me would be the risk tolerance. So I probably have a really high risk tolerance, absurdly high, probably dangerously high, which is like taking risk and, obviously starting a company and flying by the seat of my pants. I mean, entrepreneurship is, jumping out and building a plane up as you go outside of the plane. So that whole risk tolerance level has helped me learn how to scale the company and not lose sleep over it. But the other aspects of that company that I was with, the general contracting company I was with, just the great culture that they had really was something I wanted to mimic. We're all family there. I think at the time I left, they were doing about 600 million, so it's no small company. But it felt really small. Like it felt like I knew everyone there, and so that I felt was just amazing. And I was like, man, if I was going to build a company, I'd want it to build it something like this.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to that's what we've been talking about is in the beginning of this and it seems like do you feel like you've accomplished that so far?
Well, as an entrepreneur, it's like nothing's good enough. So I guess if I give myself some credit, I'd say we've done a lot and we've built a lot and it's been great. But I just, as an entrepreneur, you see the vision and you always are falling slightly short of it. And so I'd say we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that drives most entrepreneurs I know is that like, it's never good enough. We're always driving towards something else. So that's fantastic. We talked about the fact that, as you've grown and as you started that you had you've had some lessons along the way. What, has there been one major wake up call that you feel like you've come across as you've been growing that said, "Oh, wow, if I need to make a change here and to allow me to move forward."
Yeah, sure. So when I started the company, I was kind of starting it on the side of my main job. So I had to use subcontractors. There's no
Right.
need to keep an employee and manage and train them and everything like that. So I used subcontractors when I first started, and that was great. There's nothing wrong with using subcontractors. Over time, I did want to have employees, both from a culture aspect, but also of like, I didn't want, I didn't want like in the future that we would have like a company meeting and there were no painters at the company meeting. You know,
Right.
like it's like you're a painting company. It's like you should have painters in your company meeting, like with your personnel. So I didn't want it to be only subcontractors, and so I started hiring W-2 employees. And I think over time, as I was building out each role, both on the project manager role, office manager, salespeople, painters, crew leaders, I was having some significant turnover on the painter side. And yeah, that one of those moments was like, you have to make every role in this company amazing, like to the point where you would want to work in that role if you weren't the business owner. And until you do that, it's not done. It's not that you're not done building it, because if you're having turnover, there's only two reasons we have turnover. Either that's just that person was a bad fit, or you that job sucks. Like you don't have it where it's really good. It pays well, or it's chaotic or something, or the roles aren't defined. So until I built it where it's like this opportunity, this role, or this job is amazing, then I have to kind of assume that if we do have turnover, it's probably because of that. Because occasionally, yeah, you may get somebody who doesn't fit, but you always got to look inward to say, well, maybe it's just not a great opportunity yet.
Well, that, I think that's an amazing concept. I really like that, Mike. Tell me, so what have you done to make that role amazing?
So definitely have taken a lot more of the leadership and pushed it down onto the lower level. So it used to be that the project manager managed the subs and managed the employee crews, and he would talk to all the customers and schedule all the things and do the walkthroughs with them, with each crew, and do the final walkthroughs and the site visit. And that works at the subcontractor level because you don't really want your sub kind of engaging with your customer directly too much. You just always want to still maintain that control. But for the employee crews, we've pushed that down. And so now our crew leaders, or we call them job leaders, on Monday morning, they come here to the office, they grab the paint, they grab the work order, and they call the customer and they talk to the customer. And from Monday till we collect the check, there isn't any reason why a customer should call the office unless it's a question about the invoice or something. So they call the customer when they're on their way. They give them updates daily. If there's a change order and it's a small change order, they execute on the change order. They have an approval amount based on how many man hours they can do. They do the final walkthrough with the customer, and then they get the check at the end of the week or at the end of the project and drop it off here at the office, and then start back over on Monday. And that level of leadership and pushing it down where the customer is basically handed off to our crew leaders is monumental, because if you don't give people those opportunities to do that, they're forever going to feel like they're just a cog in the wheel, right? So the customer, if they don't see that it's this person, this crew leader, this job leader is on my project and I need to talk to them now, they'll just call the office. They'll just like, hey, the painters are doing something. Let me just call the office. Hey, you guys are doing something. And it's like, no. If there's a question, you need to talk to your job leader. He's a professional. He's been doing this for 5, 10 years, sometimes longer. It's like he can handle it. And if it's something that he can't handle, then we'll get involved. But we can't have, we're painting 12 houses a week. Like we can't have 12 customers calling us in the middle of the week about something. It's like we got to be able to push that leadership and that management down to that level.
I think that's a really, really important point. And, I coach the folks I coach. I always tell them that the stronger your crew leads are, that model. And over the 30 years I've looked at businesses and the 20 years I've been in service businesses, I would say that having the closer that accountability is to the customer, the better your profit and quality are. So your customer satisfaction, because look, they're not having to chase down an answer. They're talking to the person who can solve the problem that's right in front of them. I mean, that's huge. And I think that's an important lesson that may get overlooked by a lot of people. But the stronger we make our crew leads and the more accountability we give them, and people will rise to your level of expectation. I've always said one of the most insulting things you can do to somebody is have low expectations of them. And we're very guilty of doing that. Many of us are, with our employees, like especially painters, right? I love that. I mean, I really do, Mike. I love this concept because, you know, how many times are we sitting around at a table and people are just, we're joking about the quality of painters or something. And you know what? You're going to attract what you expect. And I think what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to have this level of expectation. And that's what I put my values in there. I'm going to hold these folks accountable. I'm going to give them much responsibility and I'm going to expect them to rise to it. And it sounds like you're getting that.
Yeah, and that's mostly the primary reason why I wanted to build out employee careers and W-2 painters is that you can't really have that sort of scalability or leadership pushed down to your subs. You can't do that. I mean, ultimately, it's a transactional relationship. You provide jobs for them, and they execute on the work. They're not going to be invested in helping your brand or helping your marketing or anything like that. And occasionally, you may get ones that steal jobs from you, or so. So it is a very like kind of fork in the road when it comes to incentives and alignment. But again, not to say that you can't scale a great company using subs. There are people who do it and they do it all the time. I just don't want to build a company like that. That's all.
Well, and it's interesting as you see when you look at larger and larger painting companies, you'll see that the majority of the really scaled companies are W-2, and it has to do with that. It has to do with quality and control. And when you start talking about, you're doing 12 projects a week, if you're working on 20 or 30 or 40 projects a week, there's a lot of control that needs to happen. And there's you start to realize that that's something you can't, it's more difficult to do with subs than it is with W-2s. Anyway, I won't get on that. I do want to ask this, since it's really, you've answered a lot of the questions I normally would ask, which is talking about just, employees and leadership. But what do you think what challenge has tested your leadership the most so far?
That's a good question. My leadership so far, I would say the the building out of each role and each responsibility and finding out where those gaps are. I feel like a lot of the times if there isn't clear roles and expectations, it's on me. It's on me to figure out like whose job is that to do that and who needs to do that and figure that out. That has tested my leadership because it ultimately what we want to do is what I would like to do is create a professional company, and professional companies have processes, they have systems, everything's kind of done in a certain way. Not that we're robots, but it's just so everything's more streamlined. And also you know what to expect in your job. It's not a varying thing where this week you have to do this, but next week you don't, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that has been a real challenge because I'm still at the point where I'm still doing some of the sales. And so having the time to both do marketing, which is important, and also build out processes and also run a team and also, manage my other salesperson. It's like the bandwidth shrinks. And so usually what shrinks is the working on the business thing, not the business thing.
It's easy to let that go out the door for sure. But I think judging from your results and the things that are happening in your business, I think you're at least getting a good foothold on it there, Mike. So, hey, let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit. You mentioned the importance of marketing. I know you have a pretty good marketing mix. What are some of the things that have been successful for you in marketing? I know you do a little door to door, and you had that in your background. Talk a little bit about, I guess, what's making you successful right now.
So it's a mix. I would say the biggest asset we have is our website, through SEO and stuff. But that's not easy to do. That was an investment that took like the first 2 years. I really didn't do much, a couple leads a month or something. But now it's grown to the point where it's a pretty good, substantial part of the revenue that's generated. So website SEO, doing some Facebook ads. Not a big portion of our revenue comes from it, but we're starting to grow it as far as like tweaking all the ads and how they work and the targeting. We were doing door to door. I had a guy who approached me for that, and that was working great. Unfortunately, he left. He had a different opportunity to come in, and it's been kind of difficult to scale that just because it is almost like a full-time job.
Yeah.
And so I've tried it multiple times, and I keep hitting my head up against the wall on that. And I just kind of realized that if I'm going to scale that, I probably need to find a person who can scale it for me.
Absolutely.
Not something that I can, it's a full-time job to manage those guys like that and set expectations and stuff. It works great. But again, I just don't have that bandwidth to be out there every evening knocking with them. Although I did for a good period of time, at least in the beginning. Um, and then the other thing I would say for marketing would be just a mix of like outbound marketing. So I'm part of like networking groups. I have my sales guys in a couple networking groups, and we do that. And we, have coffee with people and do that. We've gotten some commercial jobs from that. Gotten some residential jobs from that. That's all really cheap cost of marketing, but it's relationship. It's relationship. So you gotta build it up. It takes time. It's not something you can. It's not a lever to pull if you need estimates this week, so to speak.
Right. It's a good foundation. And again, when I look at the most successful and profitable companies out there, one thing I will tell you is that they don't just focus on one channel for marketing. It's definitely a mix. Networking is really important. A lot of people like to overlook that. And building out all of the channels and going back to what Tom said in the beginning, that those 192 Google reviews is not is not hurting your progress either. So I'm going to jump into that for just a second. So what have you done to make sure that you get reviews?
So we talk about it at the beginning of the job. We
Yeah.
talk about it that's part of the job. The career job leader's role is to, after doing the walkthrough, just so you know, we're going to give you a report card and just see how we do. And it's important that you share your experience, good or bad, with us. And if you feel like we did a great job and you leave a review, we'd appreciate that. So we tell them at the beginning versus just only at the end. We do it again at the end. We ask for it, and we try to say, while we're right here, do you just want to do it? And if they're not there or they're just not able to, we also just send them a link to do that. So it's just, I think it's the multiple iterations of it, and also just having that kind of upfront agreement that like, hey, would you be opposed to leaving a review if we did a great job? And most people were like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And then they've kind of already said it, and then we do a job, and they kind of feel obligated to do it. And maybe not all of them, maybe, but ultimately the ones that do, that's kind of trickled in.
I think it's a positive in the beginning. I know as a consumer, if somebody in the front end is saying, "Hey, reviews are very important to us," that signals to me that giving good service is going to be very important to you. And so I think you're already priming the pump right there to say, "Hey, our reputation is important to us. We're going to, treat you well, and yeah, we want a review." So I'm sure that's just adding to the mix for you. That's awesome. Let's kind of segue into we've talked a lot about the ladder, and now let's talk a little bit about legacy. What does legacy actually mean to you, Mike?
That's a good question. I think for me, what it means is that, to take like Nick Slavic's thing, is that if you get hit by the turkey truck,
Mhm.
does the business still exist, or does it fade into nothingness? And if it fades into nothingness, you don't really have a business. You just have a job right now. And until that point, until I can say that point that company can exist, it becomes its own entity. I can go away, and people are going to call asking for quotes. Someone's going to answer the phone and schedule those quotes. Someone's going to execute on those quotes. Someone's going to order the paint, and then someone's going to paint the house. Until that whole process can be done with little to no involvement of the owner, then I'm not really building anything. I don't have a legacy yet. But yeah, ultimately, that's what I want. I want a company that's going to live on past me, whether that is done through giving it some of it to my kids or some of it to the employees or something, or key personnel or something. I don't know, but I do want something that's going to last. I'm not in it to flip it, if that makes sense, and make a quick buck, because at that point I wouldn't even know what I would do. It's like, what are you going to do with that money? It's like, I guess I'd do it again. It's like, well, that's stupid. Just keep growing what you have, So that's what it means to me. Is more of like, can you build something that's going to last past you? And that's my goal.
I like that. Let's kind of end with this. What's one piece of advice you'd give to painters just starting out on the journey?
Well, I guess it depends on what's their biggest constraint. That has been a big help for me, is kind of figuring out what is it that's preventing your business from growing, because there's always the one thing. I can't remember the author of that book, but I read that, the one thing. It's like there's always one thing that is constraining your business. I mean, there's multiple things, but there's one that if you solve it, it just unlocks the funnel until you approach the next constraint. That is probably the hardest thing to identify in the business. I think it's a skill set that if you can teach someone that skill set, they'll forever be successful, because all they're doing is solving that problem to then move the business forward. And there's a lot of information. There's a lot of counter information of coming as far as like what I think is the constraint. Oh, I think the constraint is that we need more painters, or I think the constraint is that we need to do better Facebook ads. It's like, but really it's something else. It's like, you got to find out what that is. And so if you haven't read that book and you're a business owner, you should absolutely read that book. And then you have to sit down and think critically about, what is it, the thing that's causing me to not grow? Is it me? Am I the problem, that I'm not delegating responsibility down? Or is it lack of customers? Is it a lack of leads to getting enough estimate requests? Is it my sales? Maybe I'm not doing sales. Maybe I'm just doing estimating. I'm just running around taking measurements and emailing people quotes. It's like, that's not sales, that's estimating. And you can do that. You can do that with construction plans and not have to drive around as much. You can pump out 20 of those, so you can say that's all you're going to do. So if you have to do the sales, so there's all these little things that constrain your business. And I think if you can give that skill, or you can learn that skill, you can scale indefinitely, because you'll forever be the entrepreneur who's solving the problem.
I think that's a great point. And I think it's interesting. The numbers will tell us where the constraints are if you know how to look at them together. But I think the thing that a lot of people overlook is just human capacity. I think, especially a lot of entrepreneurs, I always say that, they've got an S tattooed on their chest, they're wearing a cape, and they think, I can just infinitely expand without adding people. And it really, that doesn't work. At some point, the human capacity is the, you can give up a lot of quality of life to grow, but at some point, there's just a max to that. There's a ceiling to it. So I think there's a fear out there of hiring. I think that people have a fear, like you mentioned, you're not as risk adverse as a lot of people. And that might be one of the reasons why it's easy for you to scale faster than a lot of people, just because you're willing to jump out there. You're willing to hire somebody. You're willing to take a risk on a marketing campaign and all of that. So anyway, I think that's a really good point. I think you made some great points there. So really appreciate all of your insights. Tom, if you want to close us out and take us away, I'll
Yeah, well, I think hey, Michael, thanks for sharing that for our listeners. I think that's a great story. If someone were to summarize you and your story, and you wanted to put it for everybody to see, and I was thinking of Greenville, you have this big, tall skyscraper down in downtown called the Daniel Building, that named after a guy who really helped build Greenville. If they were to summarize your story and put it on that building that everybody that drove through there could see it, what would it say?
That's a great question. I would say it's like, I would like to be known, at least the company would, like, we're pursuing excellence, like building excellence. And it's a constant pursuit. So it's never a goal. It's a constant pursuit of like getting better. And there's always ways to get better. I mean, you can always do better, but better customer service. You can have a better business for your employees. You can have better opportunities for their careers. So yeah, I would say the pursuit of excellence is kind of what I want to be known for.
So that's a great message to send to people. And I think I'll tie it back to when we started, and was part of your ethos is don't settle. Wherever you're at, just keep going, and personal excellence. So thank you for taking time to spend with Tara and I this morning, Michael. It's been great to learn more about your company.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.